So the church year begins in Advent, unlike the calendar year, which begins in January. So, like I say, we Christians get the honor and the privilege of celebrating New Year's Eve twice. And what do you do on New Year's Eve typically as you look back over the past year, right? Every channel is showing like the top whatevers of 2000 whatever. So I thought, let's look back over this past 12 months at the ways in which God has been faithful to us, to our community, and the ways in which the reign of Christ has been made manifest in our midst. We celebrated a few new members, some of whose faces look a little distorted because of the sheet that I'm using. I apologize. But we welcomed in Karen Wenzel, Laura Jarks, and Matt Smith, all of whom were here today and who have such a vital part of our community. You might not realize that before this year they were not members of this church. All three of them dived in right away. And Millie, who is right there in the back, who transferred her membership over from St. John's when they closed, has likewise been here every week contributing in your wonderful personality in every way that it's been wonderful to get to know you a bit more. In addition to these, I may add, we had one more person, that being Ryan Patterson, who finished confirmation this past year and became a full member of this church. It is not easy being the only person from your church going through confirmation with 3 teachers, because you get a lot of personal attention and you can't escape. And for someone who like Ryan, who likes to escape into the background a little bit, that was tough, but he did so well. He did great. This year, we likewise have one confirmand, and he's going through some of the same sorts of things. So, in addition to some new members, we had some new humans, some new members of the global church. We baptized Grayson Hicks, Zoe Engel, Theo Jackson, and Scarlett Kozik. You'll notice the picture of Theo's baptism up there is not in this church, because we baptized Theo, my wife and I, at her church, at her installation at Trinity UCC in Pottstown. But you were so faithful in showing up and supporting Nicole in this new step in her ministry, and also in welcoming Theo into the world. And he has the rare joy of being able to be a member of 2 church bodies as equally as we can possibly manage it as he grows up. So in addition to that, we said goodbye to a number of our dear members as we ushered them off into their heavenly homes. This past year, we said goodbye to Cora Sukameli, Jeff's mother, as well as Evelyn Harp, who's Min Nonan's sister, after a long, long battle with illness. And then Carol Layton, somewhat surprisingly, after about 1.5 years of battling various injuries and surgeries and problems. Shortly thereafter, we said goodbye to Jean, who, as those of you who know Jean, you know that she went through more in the past couple of years than many of us will go through in our entire lives. And more than anyone else I've ever known, she was ready. And she told me as such, and she said, I am excited for the other side. And it's such a confusing combination of emotions, is it not, when a beloved member of the body of Christ passes on to their eternal home, because we are at once rejoicing for them, and also we're sad for ourselves. And that could also be said for Sam DeWald's service that we had here. Sam was a vital member of our church since almost day one, and has held almost every office in the church. I think we decided everything but childcare. Didn't deal with the babies and the kids, but almost everything else. And so as we move out of this year and into a new year, we are doing so without these beloved members' physical presence in our midst. We are, however, remembering their legacy among us, the things that they taught us, the ways in which they shaped us, moved us, and changed us, and put us on the trajectory where we are today. And we know, as the book of Hebrews says, that we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, and we rejoice in that as well. I like to look up on some Sundays and imagine all of these knots in the pine above us are all of those who have gone before us, who have called this place their home. Maybe you want to try that some Sunday when it's not a particularly riveting message and you're a little bored. I'll assume you're being super spiritual, looking up into the heavens. I don't know if you realize that we have a thriving scout program that meets here, and we are the chartered organization for them. This year, our Boy Scout troop, after dwindling in numbers for a few years, decided to end that troop. And the 2 members, I think, that were left went into other places. We are working to start a new one because our Cub Scout troop pack. I'm going to look at Terry every time I say something about the Scouts, and he'll give me a look if I got the wording right or not, because it's been a long time since I was a Cub Scout. Our Cub Scout pack is one of the biggest in the area. We have so many children here that when they have their big meetings with the parents, they can't meet here because there's not enough space. They have to rent a fire hall. Yes, and so we are working to create a new Boy Scout program that will funnel that energy into that as well, that we might bring that back and make that a thriving group. Our Cub Scouts, by the way, are also one of the first in the area to start allowing girls to enter. And the very first, I want to say Lion Scout, very first female Lion Scout in this pack is our own Nora Hart, who would normally be sitting right there. Laser pointer. No one can see it but me. I realize that now. It's facing this way. Anyway, right over there. She's a trailblazing kind of girl. Also, we have one of the first STEM Scout programs that we, through the dedicated work of Jen Harvey, put together this STEM Scout lab. This is for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for kids that are like me and that are a bit more into building robots than they are learning how to shoot bows and arrows in the woods. And it has grown so quickly that we have no spaces left, and we're working on adding more labs to it. And I think we are the first in the Hawk Mountain Council to do this program. It's still very much a new program that's still pretty experimental. But you're also helping to subsidize this to an extent, because there are times when families can't afford to send their kids into the Scouts because it's not an expensive program, but for some parents, even a little bit is too much. And so we've able, through the Jingle Fund, to help bring in kids that otherwise wouldn't normally be able to be a part of something as life-giving as the Scouts. Our fundraisers this year were incredible, and thanks in large part to the work of Jen and Bridget and others who come in to volunteer as well. And I will say a big thanks to Beth for bringing back the Easter candy this past year. I don't know about you, I very much missed it when we weren't doing that. We sold a lot of Easter candy this past year. A lot more than we expected to. And they were rushing at the last minute to get everything together. It's such a good problem, isn't it, when you have too much need? Likewise, the bazaar, which just happened 2 weeks ago and which some of you are still recovering from, was so successful. We had twice as many vendors as we've ever had. We had so many people come through these doors. We had folks in the choir and others put together music for the whole time. I mean, you were walking around singing Christmas carols, livening up the area. We had so many people come through these doors and be blessed. And it is so much more than just handmade goods and soup. The church is a part of the community. And in fact, churches and libraries are the only 2 places left in which you can gather and they won't charge you for it. Every other place where you see people, the grocery store or the restaurants, all places you have to pay for. There are no community centers left except for the church. And so these sorts of events in the community are so much more than just a way to raise money for the church. They are a way of bringing Exeter, St. Lawrence, Mount Penn, Antietam, Reading, and all of us together in one place. Also, we had a lot of pancakes on Palm Sunday, which is a tradition that I'm so glad you started. Likewise with the chili cook-off, has blown up into its own thing. I don't think a member of our church has won the chili cook-off yet, by the way. It's all been these ringers that have come in from the outside. And I think half of the people who come out to this event aren't from the church. Once again, providing a third space where people can gather in the community to grow and to strengthen our bonds. You know, our chicken barbecue was almost done. It was almost defunct. We were losing money every year. And we were the very first chicken barbecue in the area. We invented the whole idea of it, right? I think it was Lester Leinbach, right? That's who we decided it was that started it. But then everyone started doing it, flooded the market. And so it was hard for us to do it. And with some new vision from Jen and Bridget and others, we're able to transform the way we do it, the way we advertise it, the day it is held. We broke some of these sacred traditions that we've done forever and ever and created something new and flourishing and thriving. And now we're selling out almost every single time. And it has been such a good example of when something isn't working that we love. We need to be okay with letting it die or trying something bold. And we tried something bold, and now we still have our chickens. And like I said, we have been a central part of the community this year. Lower left, the banister kind of blocks my face a little bit, is the line from the clothing swap. The one that we had in the spring. We've had 2 clothing swaps this past year. That line stretches from the door here all the way into the neighbor's yard and into their grass and further down. There were maybe 500 people that came through the doors, sharing of the excess of kids' clothes that they had and taking what they needed. And there are ways that we can do this event better, and people have suggested some wonderful ways to cut down on some of the chaos. But we have stumbled into something that the community needed, but didn't have a way to explain it, didn't have a voice for it. In fact, we're now not the only kids' clothing swap in the area anymore. Did you know that? Half a dozen other places are springing up all over the place from people who have come to this event and then took it back to their church and told their pastor or told their different boards and said, we need to try this thing. And I've actually had some people come up to me and say to me, we tried the clothing swap, but nobody came, and so we're not going to do it again. And I say to them, nobody came to our first one either. We had this crazy idea for an event that may or may not work. 10 people showed up. We had 3 times as many volunteers here. We had personal shoppers for everyone that came through. It was awkward. But we stuck with it, and we did this, and we prayed, and we trusted that God would multiply our works, and God took our mess, and he blessed it, and turned it into an overwhelming event that's almost too big for us to host anymore. In fact, somebody from the Reading Eagle said they wanted to cover the next one, and I almost don't want them to. I don't want more people to come because then we have to move it out of the church. And I like the church being a central place in the community. Likewise with Trunk or Treat. This year we had almost 400 kids here. And I heard from so many parents that they came in from the city because they don't feel safe in the streets right now, because it's a really difficult time in Reading. There's a lot of violence on the streets right now in our city, and Halloween can be a scary time for that. You don't know when you might get caught in the middle of something. And so I had so many thank yous from parents who brought their kids into a safe place. And with all of the bad press that churches have gotten for not being a safe place for children, it is such a testament to the reign of God that this can be a haven of security and safety in a neighborhood of so much uncertainty and scary violence. Likewise, we were the only game in town when it came to the Easter egg hunt this year. right? Everyone else got rained out because it kind of rained every day for all of spring and summer. And so we had it inside. This is one of my favorite pictures, by the way, over here, of all the Easter eggs hidden in our sign up here. And it was chaotic, and it was crazy to have all those kids, because we had more kids than we ever had, running around inside of the classrooms. But my goodness, Pam, you did a wonderful job of corralling children throughout all the different rooms, and there was no bloodshed, and everyone went home happy and well sugarized. And this one is a pretty dark picture because it was taken in the dark. These are a whole bunch of children sitting in cardboard boxes that look like cars in front of a movie screen, watching a movie, and perhaps the only drive-in movie they will ever attend in their life, while the mothers back here mingle with each other as our second annual mother-child banquet. But it wasn't a banquet in the stuffy sense that you might think of. You served hot dogs and popcorn and finger food, and the kids designed these cars, and everyone had this really fun time. And I wasn't there, obviously, not as a mother. But from the pictures, it looked like we were maybe 50-50 on members of the church and friends. And having something like that, in which it feels safe to invite your friends, something your kids would want to invite their friends to. Because they might not say, "I'm so excited to come to church on Sunday morning." Though, I did hear that yesterday. A kid who was so excited that he wanted to sleep over at his friend's house so he could come to our church in the morning. I'm going to write that one down and put it somewhere. We also did VBS, and this was the first year that our church planned it. Though it was still hosted at Schwartzwald, we put everything together, and we had no idea what we were doing. And God bless Laura, had joined the church that Sunday, and then came up to me and volunteered to lead this thing. And we messed up so many things, and we were so disorganized, and she created a whole curriculum that we didn't even use. And it was a mess. But God blessed it so much. We had more kids that time than I think they've ever had before. I still see those kids and their parents at Panera every Friday. And I'll get people coming up to me that say, "Hey, you probably don't remember me, but I was at VBS this year, and my kid wanted to come say hi to the science man." Having that connection to the community, where you get a kid for maybe 3 days, and you can plant the seed of Christ in that life at that young age. That is something that the church used to do really well, and that the church has forgotten how to do, and that we are relearning how to do today. And I am so proud of the work that we have done in that regard. And over there on the right was our celebration for our preschool's 40th anniversary. There were people there who were kids who had gone through the program, who then had kids who went through the program. We've been around for that long. 200 some kids through the program. Probably our most visible presence in the community. Actually, I have a big problem with Google, because if you search for Community UCC in Google Maps, it will come up as the preschool and not as the church. And I have been on tech support, I have sent in so many things, and the reason it does that is because more people search for the preschool than they do for the church, and so the algorithm prioritizes it, because more people are interested in the preschool than they are in the church. And that's wonderful. There are so many people interested in this preschool. And we have these bold new plans of expanding that, of doing some new things that we've never tried before, some visions and long-term dreams that were coming into fruition in this next year. And we're very, very, very excited about that. And in our mission work, we were able to give 2 scholarships this past year to deserving high school graduates of Exeter and Antietam high schools. That scholarship, which was started by the Killians, which you can give to at any time, by the way, goes to students that their guidance counselors feel have a commitment to their community, to bettering the place where they are planted in this particular time. This year, we are adding a third one for Votech, for those kids that are moving into more of a vocational school. We don't want to forget them as well. The Heifer International, the tube is out there right now where you throw your change in. My son loves this. You know, last year we raised $490 in that tube alone, and it cost $500 to buy a cow. And so somebody threw in $10 in the last minute, and we bought a cow for a family in a developing nation. A cow that will transform that entire community, which seems like such a simple, kind of strange gift to give to somebody, but can be such a transformative thing. We hosted Families Through Family Promise 3 times this year. Do you realize that? It seemed like it happened all the time, because it was. We normally would do 2 years, but they were having some really hard times with some churches dropping out, and so we volunteered a 3rd time. And you made it happen. It was tough to find some volunteers to stay the night, but you still made it happen, and we treated these families like they were our welcomed guests, like they were members of our own family, and I heard that from those people, because they don't always get that treatment at churches that they go to or when they have to stay in motels. It is rare for somebody on the verge of homelessness to be treated like they are valuable. And that is something that you give to these people by your work. And also by the work of the Jingle Fund. We were able, earlier in the year, right before Christmas, to help a single mother of 2 who was about to lose her car, to keep her car. Do you imagine a single mother of 2 losing her transportation right before Christmas? And then later on, you were able to help another single mother who was unable to pay her electric due to some catastrophic water damage in her home, if you can imagine such a thing this year. And also having her wallet stolen. And you were able to help her to stay on her feet and take care of her children through just that change that you give once a month. You know, in our worship together, do you remember we had a pastoral intern this year? For the first time in a decade, Shara Wirtz was with us. She preached, she helped to lead worship, she led Bible study, and all sorts of other work. We were blessed by the work that she did. She led a discipleship group. We did these for about 8 months or so, had some small group meetings around the community, tried to meet in places like Dunkin' Donuts to get some of the community involved. Those groups kind of evolved into something different. One of those groups has evolved into yoga every Saturday here at the church, once again, bringing in people from the community for spiritual and physical practice. We had, you can't see, Megan and Lindsay and Jody in between them right there, present at both youth events as well as the regional youth event. Lindsay was on the planning team for those. So proud of her growing into her leadership. She was in the confirmation class when I first got here. I feel like that class are my babies. And Jody, I don't know if you realize, has been helping with youth events for 25 years this year. She is a gift not only to us, but to the conference as well. And do you remember Maundy Thursday this year? Instead of doing a traditional, predictable service, you read the entire book of Mark out loud in front of microphones while eating dinner and then singing some songs, and we took communion in your seats downstairs, partially as Jesus and his disciples would have done it. Somewhat informal, somewhat weird. It took a couple of hours, but I'll bet you most of the people that you know have never read the book of Mark out loud all the way through. You tried a new thing, and the Spirit moved in new ways. You remember our picnic? You remember these guys? Our church picnic got rained out this year. Surprise, surprise. And so we moved inside. And we brought in Christian jugglers. Because why not? That was Kristen Schrank's idea. She saw these guys and she thought they would be fun to have for our picnic. And you know what? That added such vitality and fun to that picnic. And being stuck inside, we needed something. right? And so there's no way we could have predicted that that would have worked so much better inside than it would have outside in the park. But sometimes when things go wrong, that God is there ready with something better for you. And that is something that I have learned time and time again in this church. You know, the very first time I preached here, when I was just fresh out of seminary and just filling in for Pastor Deb, my microphone stopped working, and it broke, and it was, and so I had to hold it like Bob Barker, like this, and Dan wasn't around, and so we were playing off of CDs of recordings of organs, and everything kind of went wrong that day, and everything was just so wonderfully endearing when you have to rely on the Spirit in those sorts of moments. So what's next? What is next for this church year, 2018, 2019? What's on the horizon for us? Well, I think one of the things is an increased technological capacity in worship. As you can see, we are on the way. We're not quite there. But the first step in adding to our capacity is to add to the kind of the behind the scenes stuff that you don't see. Like our internet service, which is 100 times faster now, more capable of doing a lot more things. Our Wi-Fi is now spread around the entire building. Our phone systems are updated. There's a camera up there that is sending video to the people in the nursery. Though that's not perfect and the audio is not super great, that is a placeholder because in the new year we have plans of putting a high definition camera in the sanctuary so we can live stream and record our services. So if you find yourself on vacation or in a hospital somewhere, or for those of our members who cannot leave their homes, they can still join us on a Sunday morning. From their beds or from their chairs or wherever they are, they can tune in and they can be a part of our worship, the worship that makes them feel like they're at home again. That's something that we can do now that we've upgraded some of that. We're talking about finding ways to put some non-intrusive, non-flashy audio-visual, like some screens up here above the doors. Not anything that detracts from the beauty of the space or makes a spectacle of technology, because we're not about that life. Something that will help to add to our services. I can't tell you how many times I've wished I could show you a map during my sermons. My sermons would be so much shorter if I could just show you a map every once in a while. So there's motivation for you. We have plans that we're talking about expanding our preschool. I don't know, Christine, if I can say in what way. I can? Oh, we're adding a kindergarten. Super excited about that. That's something that's been in the dreaming stages for years. This was actually Sam DeWald's idea years and years and years ago, but we are finally in a place where it makes sense, where there's need, where we think we probably will have a waiting list for adding to our capacity of adding maybe 18 new students, 2 more teachers, expanding our reach in the community and the ministry we're able to do with our children. We'll continue exploring becoming an open and affirming church. That's a process that started this year, slowly, quietly. A lot of information gathering and slow conversations on purpose. That work will then start to expand out into larger form conversations as we talk more about what that means and what it might mean and where your heart is and where you are, where your spirit is. And we will see where God has for us in that in the next year. But really, at the end of it all, what's next for our church in this coming year is whatever God has for us. Because I've been only here for 5 years, but I can't tell you the amount of times I thought something was going to happen, and then a different thing happened. And when you accept that other thing happening, and you move with where God is moving, something good comes out of that. And something good has come out of it so many different times. And I look forward to following the call of that Spirit with you in this new year. Of all of my plans being upended and God doing something new and different and wonderful instead. Or God doing exactly what I think God's going to do, but in a better way. I don't know. God might be doing something new. God might be doing something old, bringing back something we've forgotten or we've lost. I have no idea. But friends, I've said this before, we are like a church full of antennae. No one of us is better at receiving the Spirit of God, and together we are able to discern much clearer where God is leading and what God is doing. And I'm so thankful for a church that takes that seriously and that joins in with me, and that this is not a church led by one person, but led by everyone, discerning the call of the Spirit. Though I will say, for the first time in a long time, that work will not include Robin. Robin, if you would come forward. Yeah, I'm going to make you stand up. Robin has been our custodian now for how many years? 11 years. Living in the beautiful brick house next door and doing all of the things that make everything possible. Setting up, cleaning up, tearing down, making sure the walkways are salted and cleared, all the things that we take for granted because they've always just been done. Robin has been serving us church faithfully for all this time, and it's now at a point where with her boys growing up and moving out and beginning their lives anew, that's a lot of work for one person to get done. And so I am so happy and so thankful that you are moving on to the next stage of your life. She has a wonderful house in Fleetwood. She works full-time at Bergheim, by the way. In addition to this, she actually worked all night, went home, napped on the couch for a few minutes, and then came here. That's the kind of thing that Robin does all the time, and does not ask for any praise or validation from anyone for doing that. And so we are eternally grateful for your service and for your family and for everything you have brought to this church. And so I want to thank you personally on behalf of all of our church, and just wish you the best in all you do. Can I pray for you? Okay. Lord God, we thank you for Robin. We thank you for her steadfast service. We thank you for her heart, for her caregiving, for all of the children that she has raised, and for all the work she has done in this church. She's never asked for praise or for recognition, God. We thank you for that humility, and as uncomfortable as it makes her, we want to thank her for that today. We pray for this next stage in her life, for this new home, for this new set of responsibilities, or lack thereof in some cases, that she would fill her with joy and hope and peace, and that you would stay with her, connect her to a group of people out there that want to take care of her in this next stage of her life. In your name. Amen. You know, it's only fitting, too, by the way, that we make you do more work than ever before this bazaar. Like in the last 2 weeks that you are here. We throw the craziest bazaar of all time. Well, friends, if there's anything I have forgotten about this year, I know. Chances are I didn't forget, and I didn't have time to include it, because I've already gone over time. Because God is doing that many things, and so many little things. So many things like all of the bags of groceries out there for the food pantry, or for the work that Stitching for You does that you don't know about always, the work of the property committee, the work of the choir. There's constantly things are happening all the time. And if I were to go through that, we'd be here for hours. And so, friends, as we conclude this year, we thank God for all of God's faithfulness to us, to our church, to our community, to our region, through us, through the Spirit. And we look forward to what God is doing next. Let us take a moment of prayer, of thanksgiving, and of blessing.